everyone, this is Anna from Savvy Cat Realty, and today I am going to talk to you about the cost of living in Portugal. For those of you who don't know, Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency that helps expats settle in Portugal. We work from a lifestyle and sustainability perspective. So basically, we work with the personal needs of each client to find the specific location that matches them, and we help them try to integrate in a sustainable way, both culturally and financially, for both parties as much as we can. We are a team of locals, all Portuguese and all that have lived in the specific cities they work in for most of their lives, so we are able to give you all of the inside help. So if this makes sense for you and you would like to know more, feel free to check our website in www.savvycatrealty.com, where you will find a lot of information. So about today's topic, the cost of living in Portugal. This is, of course, one of the main concerns when people are relocating to a different country. I would say that the majority of my clients move to Portugal because they want better quality of life with their money going further. So of course that is one of the heavy weights on the considerations when choosing the country to live in and to move to. So I did a bunch of research for this video in order to try and give you as much of accurate information as I can. And I did also the statistics that I'm going to include here are based on our own MLS system and for the 2024 period, so ever since the 1st of January. And then I also did research using internal methods for the other numbers that I'm going to give you. So of course, that the first thing that you should be worried about when moving to a different country, that's usually the biggest cost, is the cost of rent or the cost of purchase. So of course that depends on whether you are looking to buy or to rent. But overall, I thought that it would be interesting to give you a comparison of 4 different locations, so you are aware that these costs may vary rather drastically. So of course, the first location that is important to mention is Lisbon. And in Lisbon, the average price of rent is 23 euros per square meter. So that means 2,300 euros for a 100-meter apartment. And the average price for purchase is actually 6,000 at the moment. This is, of course, for the center of Lisbon. And then in Porto, you already see a drastic difference. Like Lisbon is very drastically more expensive than any other city in Portugal. And Porto, being the second most expensive, has an average rent of 19 euros per square meter. So that means 1,900 for 100 square meters. And an average price per square meter of 3.6 thousand euros. So that means that it's once again in the center of Porto, and that the price in Porto is basically 40% cheaper than in Lisbon. So that's of course something that you should be paying attention to. Another city that I've considered here that I think it's important to consider as the average cost city. So if you go to a medium city, and I used both Coimbra and Caldas da Rainha as references. So in Caldas da Rainha, which is about an hour drive from Lisbon to the north of Portugal, and it's an increasingly popular location because of the central location and also being a very pleasant city to live in. So the average cost of rent in Caldas is 9 euros per square meter. So that means 900 euros for 100 square meters. And in Coimbra, it's 15 euros per square meter. So that means 1,500 euros for 100 square meters. And then for buying, we have an average of 2,000 euros per square meter on Caldas da Rainha and 2.4 on Coimbra. And I believe that this will be more or less the price of most medium cities. So the medium popular cities, so to say, they will be going probably between 2 and 2.5k for buying, and between 9 and 15 for renting. And then if you want to, I put here an example of a cheap location, and I chose Chaves for this example. And in Chaves, the average cost per square meter is for rent is €6, which means 600 euros for an 100 square meter apartment. And the average cost for purchasing is 1,500 euros. So as you can see, prices can vary drastically depending on where you are looking to move, and that will affect drastically your budget and your cost of life. There are locations that are even cheaper than Chaves, but they won't be cities. Chaves is a city. And I think the places where you get the best quality of life in Portugal tend to be in medium-sized cities or in the suburbs of big cities. So if you are like within half an hour drive from a bigger city, there you tend to have amazing locations with amazing cost of life. Like, for example, Famalicão, Vila Nova de Famalicão, it's about half an hour drive from Porto, and it's a city that's developing a lot, and it's quite affordable. Same thing goes for Amarante. Then you have Caldas da Rainha comparing to Lisbon, and Santarém also comparing to Lisbon. So that can be a good bet when looking at locations to go to and concerning the cost of life. So the other thing that I think will be one of the bigger costs when you are budgeting for your move to Portugal is going to be likely health insurance. I actually work with people on all kinds, not all kinds, but different age groups. I have been having clients on the 30 age group, and then I also have a lot of retiree clients. And of course, this varies drastically when it comes to price of health insurance. So I made a search on a platform that is Deco Proteste, that it's basically the consumer rights platform here in Portugal. And I'm going to give you here two values for two different age groups. So I searched for example of someone that is 58 years old, and the prices of insurance goes from 480 euros to 3,400 euros annually. And the one that I use, that I'm personally very happy with, would cost 1,711 euros annually for this age group. That comes out to about 140 something euros per month. In my age group, so the 30s, and I use myself as an example, and I'm 33. And in this age group, the values go from 160 euros to 2,100 euros per year. Of course, this is a big range because it's covering basically all the insurances I found. I put here the example of the cheaper one and the most expensive one, and they obviously have very different coverages. And then I'm giving you, once again, the example of the one I use that costs about 1,200 euros per month. In my case, it comes down to about 92 because I've had it for a few years. But for new subscriptions, it is about 100 euros for what I see. And I'm very happy with it. It has a lot of coverage. It's about up to 100,000 euros on ambulatory and, regular issues. And honestly, surgeries in Portugal are not crazy expensive like in the US. Most surgeries will cost less than 10,000, and only like top of the new technology high-end surgeries will cost maybe 30k. So having a policy that covers 100,000, it's very good coverage. I am very comfortable. I think even if I had like a really big issue, I could be at peace of mind and wouldn't have to pay much. In my case, when it comes to co-payments, they used to be pretty low. So for regular appointments, it used to be like 18 euros. And for blood work, it's like 15 euros. And then for surgeries, which I actually already had two, I know, I'm only 33, I only paid 250 euros co-payment. But they actually changed that this year to either 500 or 1,000, depending on the type of surgery. They say minor surgery is 500 and major surgery is 1,000. So I'm glad I had mine before this year. Anyway, moving on. The next cost that you will have all the time if you are living in Portugal on your own is, of course, utilities. Utilities is once again something that can vary drastically. If you are just a single household and the cost of electricity, and electricity is actually private companies, but the water services are generally owned by the municipalities, and the costs can vary quite a bit. But overall, I think you can have a two-person household and expect to pay anywhere between 60 and 80, maybe 100 euros for the utilities, and that depends on how economic you are and the location you are in. And I think it's most cases would be on the lower side, to be honest. And then for telecommunications, that it is, of course, the other common expense and generally necessary expense. Once again, the contracts may vary. If you go for something cheaper, it will probably start at about 30 euros. And then if you want a fancier package, it will probably go to like 80 to 100, maybe 150 if you are pushing it to something really fancy. I actually pay for the package that me and my brothers use. So it's 3 cell phones plus internet and TV package with fiber internet and all of that. And it costs me 89 euros, something like that. So I think that's a pretty good reference to have. Then, of course, the next thing that you will have is then just general costs of living, like groceries, eating out, and so on. And for this part, I actually am consulting a website called Numbeo that basically uses references of people just make the input there, and then it creates statistics, so anyone can go there and add their input and pricing on their locations and so on. And I found it pretty interesting, so I'm just going to read it out and then give my personal opinion on whether or not it's accurate. So what we have here is the first section is restaurants, and then you have a meal in a cheap restaurant, and it has 10 euros. I believe this is doable. It's harder and harder, especially in bigger cities, if to find a complete meal for 10 euros. It's becoming pretty much impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very, very hard. I would say that in most cases will be 15 euros. But then, of course, if you go to a fast food restaurant like McDonald's and so on, most of the menus are priced around 8 euros, I think. That's also what's written here, and I think it's about right. Then, if for a more average restaurant, I would say that the prices are about 20 to 30 euros per person, depending on the kind of restaurant and if you are ordering wine and so on. I am a foodie, so I do often dine out and go to fancy places, and I've paid anywhere between 20 and 60 euros for a meal. The 60 euros are generally just really high-end places. It's not common at all. I would say the common range for nicer restaurants tends to be on the 20-30. So I hope that's a good reference. That's also what we have here in Numbeo. So it says meal for two in an average restaurant with 3 plates, 40 euros. I would say that's about right. Then you have here, curious that the first things that people are concerned about is beer. So you have National beer, half a liter, 2.5 euros. If it is on the restaurant, I think it can go to 2.5 to 5 euros depending on the type of beer. Then we have imported beer, 3 euros. Once again, I think that's the low end. It will be from 3 euros to 10 euros depending on the type of beer once again. And you know, the whole craft beer and so on is very popular. I don't even like beer, so but I do know the prices. I have a lot of friends that like beer. So the next thing that you have here is cappuccino, which is pretty much imported in Portugal. It's not a really typical thing. We have like galão, which is café with milk. But the cappuccino thing just became popular when Starbucks came to Portugal. It wasn't a Portuguese thing at all. So anyway, they have here cappuccino at 177 euros. Yeah, I would say it would go between 180 and 2.5 euros. Then in fancier places it can be a bit more. Then you have cola, Pepsi, so basically sodas, and you have here a reference of 1.57. I would say that in restaurants it tends to be between 1.5 and 3.5 euros, restaurants and cafes. Then you have 33 milliliters bottle of water at €1.11. Yeah, once again, I think, yeah, in restaurants it's probably going to start at 1.5 euros. If you go to the supermarket, it's going to be like 30 cents or something. And then the next section is groceries. So in groceries, you have here as reference milk, 1 liter, 93 cents. I think that's about right. I think it can be between like 75 and 120 depending on the brand and promotions and so on. Then you have fresh bread, half a kilo, 138. Yeah, I also think that's about right. Once again, can be a bit more, a bit less. Then you have white rice, 1 kilo, 136. Also sounds about right. Eggs, 12, a dozen eggs, 2.72. I think they're a bit more expensive now. I think now they are more at like 3 euros something, but I wouldn't put my hands on it. Then you have cheese, 1 kilo, 9.88. That's actually sounds cheap. But then again, I really like cheese and I tend to eat expensive cheese. I'm sure there are cheese that cost 9.88. So let's leave that at that. And then we have chicken fillets, 1 kilo, 6.85. Sounds about right. We have ham, steak, or similar red meat, €11.71. Also sounds about right. Apples, 1 kilo, 1.97. Banana, 1.26. Tomato, 2.21. Alface, lettuce, right, they have it here in Portuguese, right? Lettuce, 1.37. Yeah, most of the things here sound about right. Oh, they have tobacco here too, which once again I don't smoke, so I don't know if this is right, but given most of the other values sound about right, it probably is. It says 5.30 euros per 20 pack of Marlboro. And then we have here transportation. Transportation, they can hear local transport, 1 ticket, 2 euros. It depends. For example, in the metro in Porto, I think the current price is 1.30. It's something like that. And I think it's 1.40 in Lisbon. And then it also is the same for buses and so on. So yeah, I guess it's a bit more cheaper than what it's here, although they don't specify what kind of local transport they are referring to. Then you have here the monthly pass, 40 euros. That's what my agent pays in Lisbon, so it's probably about right. I actually never had a monthly pass, but I think my brother had one and it was also 40 euros. Then beginning of the taxi fare, 3.50. Yeah, that's right. Usually nowadays most people use Uber because it's cheaper and more convenient. So within Porto, when I want to go to the center, and same thing in Lisbon, because you really don't want to park in center. So whenever I want to go to center, I take an Uber or go by subway, of course. And it usually costs me like between 3 and 4 something euros. And I live still inside of Major Porto, but in one of the outside areas, so to say. Then we have gas, 172. I put diesel in my car just last weekend. I think it was 166, the additive one. So yeah, also sounds about right. They said, then they have here the example for cars. We have the Volkswagen Golf 1.590 Trendline. I don't know anything about cars, so I'm going to believe their prices. It says it costs 29,763 euros. Then we have the Toyota Corolla sedan, which I actually own one in the company, and 33,758. I think it's well, the Corolla, this is probably the, I think it costs a bit more than that new now. Second-hand, you probably can get it at less than that, but once again, I am not 100% sure of that. But yeah, most of the things they have here, I think, are more or less correct. They have here the utility is 100 euros. I think it's a bit more expensive than reality. In reality, it's probably going to be a bit less unless you spend a lot. When I was living in my apartment in Portimão, I would pay around 60 euros utilities. And in Calda, in the other apartments, I tend to pay less, but then again, I'm usually not there the whole month, so I can't really be sure on that. Then we have here the mobile 10 gigabytes plan, 19 euros, sounds about right. Internet, 36 euros. Yeah, I think one annoying thing here in Portugal is that you tend to need to get the whole package. If you want fiber internet, you need to have TV also. I actually don't really care about TV, but I have TV in my apartment because I have to, otherwise I don't get fiber internet. But yes, the TV internet package tends to be around those values. Then we have here monthly costs of sports. We have fitness club, 35 euros. Yeah, I think it can be anywhere between 25 and 60 euros depending on the kind of club or gym you want to. Tennis court, 1 hour, 12 euros 40. I have no idea about this. Childcare, private 1 month for the whole day for one child, 400 euros. I think that's also about right. I have a few friends with kids. Primary school, the private one, annual 9,300. Yeah, but you also have free public schools, so keep that in mind. And then we have the average salaries and so on. Yes, so that basically covers it all. So this was fun and comparing. I hope it was useful. And I think we covered pretty much everything, but I would love to hear your feedback and comparisons to your own countries, like what things are drastically different. I'm curious about that. I hope this was useful. For those of you who don't know, we are here every week. Every week we launch a new video with hopefully useful information for those of you looking into moving to Portugal or already living in Portugal. And for those of you can always reach out to us directly in www.savvycatrealty.com or at contact@savvycatrealty.com. You can book a free call with one of our advisors in our website, and you can also book a call with me, although that one is paid. So I hope this was useful. I hope to hear your feedback, and I will see you all again next week. Bye. Overall, if you have about 700 euros on top of your expenses like rent and utilities, you can live well in Portugal, and the more you have, the more comfortably you will live, and the more luxurious lifestyle you will be able to afford. So it's a bit ironic because the minimum wage in Portugal is about that. So you can live well on the minimum wage as long as you don't pay rent. But yes, then considering rent, I would say that about 1,600, 1,700, depending on where you're at, you probably can live well with like 1,500 on smaller locations. But of course, the more you have, the more comfortable you will be.